Hi there, I'm Ron Pereira of Gemba Academy, and I'd like to ask you a question. If someone asked you to explain, and I mean really explain, what this thing called lean manufacturing or the lean office was all about, well, what would you say? Well, by the end of this video, you'll understand and be able to explain exactly what lean is, and you'll have advanced or perhaps even begun your personal continuous improvement journey. Okay, well, before we get started, allow me to explain what it is you're about to learn. Well, by the end of this video, you'll know why lean can and will change the world if applied properly. You'll also know what lean is and isn't, as well as its long history. And finally, you'll be introduced to some of the most popular lean principles, systems, philosophies, and tools used today by business, healthcare, and government organizations all over the world. All right, well, let's begin by discussing why any of us should bother understanding or implementing lean. And to get us started, let's begin with a quote from Dr. Deming, who once said, "It's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory." And while it wouldn't be entirely accurate to say that lean and other continuous improvement methodologies such as Six Sigma will solve all of the world's problems, the recent global economic crisis we find ourselves in has made it crystal clear that organizations must be willing to change and improve if they hope to prosper and in some cases survive. Additionally, world markets are definitely expanding, and the need to compete on a global basis has never been more important. It doesn't matter where in the world you live or work, I promise you, someone is working to do the same job for less money and at better quality. Next, because of the tough economic times we find ourselves in, our customers are demanding better quality, delivery, and lower costs like never before. And finally, the traditional methods of operating our companies simply don't work anymore. The days of holding massive amounts of inventory and taking months to deliver a product a consumer wants in days are long gone. Okay, well, now that we have a better understanding of the need for change, let's learn what lean is and how it can help each and every one of us. Well, first of all, lean is an operational excellence strategy that enables you to change for the better. In fact, the Japanese word Kaizen, which is often used by lean practitioners to describe incremental improvements made throughout the lean journey, means to change for the better. And while Kaizen can lead to quick improvements, the true spirit of lean is to work with a slow and steady purpose instead of quickly and recklessly. Along these lines, Taiichi Ohno, one of the chief architects of the Toyota production system, once said, "The slower but consistent tortoise causes less waste and is much more desirable than a speedy hare that races ahead and stops occasionally to doze." Mr. Ohno goes on to say that the Toyota production system can be realized only when all of the workers become tortoises. Now, another common definition is that lean is the persistent pursuit and elimination of waste. Well, the Japanese word for waste is muda, which describes any activity that's done but adds no real value to the product or service. Sadly, many companies latch onto the elimination of waste aspect of lean while completely forgetting about arguably the most important aspect of lean, namely respect for people. So, while we must always fight to eliminate waste, we must never lose sight of our most important assets of all, our employees. Finally, lean is not only about attacking waste while increasing the speed at which products are produced. You see, lean is also very focused on improving the quality of our products as well as the stability of our processes. In fact, many lean principles such as one-piece flow will never succeed without stable and high-quality processes in place. All right, well, in order to truly understand what lean's all about, it's important to understand its history. And as we'll soon learn, the terms lean manufacturing or lean enterprise are actually relatively new in the grand scheme of things. In fact, most people assume that so-called lean thinking started in Japan by the founders of Toyota. This is actually false. In fact, in 1574, King Henry III watched the Venice arsenal produce finished galley ships every hour using continuous flow processes. And when we fast forward to the year 1799, we discover Eli Whitney perfecting the concept of interchangeable parts, which was another manufacturing breakthrough. Next, in 1902, a young man by the name of Seiichi Toyota revolutionized the manufacturing world forever with his invention of the judoka concept. Simply put, Mr. Toyota discovered a way to make his mother's automatic loom stop running when a piece of thread broke instead of continuing to run while creating excess amounts of wasted product. Well, little did he know, but the concept of judoka, or automation with a human touch, would later become a pillar of the vaunted Toyota production system. A few years later, a man by the name of Henry Ford was busy building an American empire called the Ford Motor Company. And in 1910, Ford moved operations to Highland Park, often referred to as the birthplace of lean manufacturing, due to the continuous flow of parts throughout the massive plant. A year later, in 1911, Seiichi Toyota traveled to the United States in order to study Ford's revolutionary way of producing the Model T. It was shortly after this visit that Mr. Toyota first began to conceptualize what we now call the Toyota production system. Then, in 1938, the just-in-time, or JIT concept was born at Toyota. Well, the basic premise behind JIT is that we only make what we need when we need it, while downstream processes take what they need from upstream processes. Well, when coupled together with the other pillar of TPS, judoka, or automation with a human touch, we arrive at what we often refer to as the TPS Stonehenge, which places the concept of thoroughly removing waste while respecting people at the top. Now, 1949 was an extremely important year in the history of TPS, as a young engineer named Teiichi Ono was promoted as shop floor manager at Toyota. Mr. Ono would soon become one of the chief architects of the Toyota production system. In fact, Mr. Ono was the first person to develop the elimination of waste concept, as well as the first to use Kanban to control the amount of work in process produced within the plant. And while Mr. Ono is commonly remembered for the invention of many of the lean tools we use today, it could be argued that his greatest gift to us all was the way he challenged Toyota associates to think and solve problems by asking why again and again. Next, as the Toyota production system matured and Toyota began to excel as a corporation, the rest of the world began to take notice. And in 1975, the Toyota production system was translated into English, enabling, for the first time, non-Japanese speaking individuals the opportunity to learn about this amazing production system. Up to this point, the term lean manufacturing wasn't used to describe the way Toyota worked. Well, this changed in 1990 as a group of American researchers led by Dr. James Womack traveled the world in order to study the various manufacturing methods in use. And what they learned during their travels was that Toyota was by far the most efficient automotive company in the world. And it was at this time that one of Dr. Womack's research assistants actually coined the phrase lean manufacturing. And as it turns out, the term lean, as well as the results of their research, was shared with the world when the book, The Machine That Changed the World, was released. Well, this brings us to the present day. And while lean is definitely being used to eliminate waste and increase profits in manufacturing environments around the world, lean has also spread to many other areas. In fact, you'll find lean being utilized in office environments where things such as reducing the time it takes to process customer orders is very common. Another area lean has really taken off in is in our hospitals, where things like reducing errors and the time it takes to find critical supplies has added tremendous value. Well, the military is also attacking waste and variation with both Lean and Six Sigma. And even parts of the U.S. Postal Service have begun their own Lean journey where they've benefited from the use of tools like value stream mapping and error proofing. All right, well, now that we've covered the history of the Toyota production system and lean manufacturing, it's time to discuss some of the most common tools lean practitioners employ. First, we come to 5S, which is probably the most popular lean tool used today. When translated to English from the Japanese words, 5S stands for sort, straighten, shine, standardize, and sustain. And while 5S has become a housekeeping initiative within many companies, it's far more than this. You see, the true purpose of 5S is to ensure that abnormalities can be identified immediately. Now, after 5S, one of the most powerful lean tools is value stream mapping. Now, it's not uncommon that after value stream mapping an area, most organizations realize they have far more opportunity for improvement than they ever imagined. And it's often said that value stream mapping helps organizations see waste like never before. Another powerful Lean concept is cellular manufacturing, where product is passed to the next step in a balanced manner, one piece at a time. The ideal condition for all Lean companies is to receive orders at the start of the process and quickly flow the product through all the processing steps with no delay or queue. However, in some cases, pure continuous flow isn't always possible, in which case we must then implement what we call pull. This basically means an individual work area will not start production until a downstream process or customer tells it to. Now, one of the primary means of implementing a downstream pull system is by the use of Kanban. Now, Kanban is a Japanese word that literally means sign. In the context of production control, Kanban refers to the visual production control system that signals replenishment. A Kanban can take many forms. The most common is the Kanban card, but there are many other variations of Kanban. Everything from push carts to golf balls can serve the purpose of a Kanban. When in order for pull and Kanban to function properly, we must first level the production schedule. The Japanese word for this is heijunka. The basic idea of heijunka is that instead of producing in large batches in order to avoid changeovers, we must focus our efforts on reducing the time it takes to do a changeover, allowing us to smooth both the volume and mix of the production schedule. Now, the tool most commonly used to facilitate these lightning quick changeovers is single minute exchange of dies, or SMED. Now, the basic idea of SMED is to do as much of the changeover as we can while the machine is running, so that when the machine does stop producing, we minimize the downtime, much like we see when watching a world-class pit crew in action. Next, whenever a company makes a transition from traditional mass production to one-piece flow, it's absolutely critical that all machines and equipment are up and running in a reliable manner. As such, things like machine breakdowns must be avoided at all costs. In order for this to be the case, Lean producers typically have a strong TPM, or Total Productive Maintenance program, in place. Now, these are just a few of the most popular Lean tools and concepts used today. But with this said, there are many more Lean tools and concepts available to us, such as andon lamps, low-cost intelligent automation, poka-yoke, visual control, supplier development, A3 thinking, and the product preparation process. And while we're not able to dive in each of these tools and concepts in this introductory lesson, you can rest assured that we'll take you on a thorough journey into all of these in future Gemba Academy courses. Now then, while these tools and concepts of Lean are extremely important, we'd also like to stress that they're not enough. You see, in order to really understand and succeed at Lean, we must learn about some of the less discussed philosophies of Lean. Now, the first philosophy of Lean is Kaizen. Now, some may attempt to label Kaizen as a tool. Some also think of Kaizen as a 4 to 5 day improvement event. And while these so-called Kaizen events are indeed important and powerful, true Kaizen is much more than this. True Kaizen is a way of thinking and working that basically asks the question, how can we improve something today? The Kaizen mindset is one that never settles for good. Instead, it's always focused on finding a better way, even if it's just a little bit better. Next, as we mentioned earlier, Lean companies must do their best to work slowly and with a steady purpose instead of quickly and recklessly. Another key philosophy of Lean is Genchi Genbutsu, which literally means to go and see what's happening at the place the work is done. In other words, if there's a problem on the production floor, the management team shouldn't attempt to solve it from a conference room or boardroom. Instead, they should go to the Gemba, the place the work is done, to see what the issue is with their own eyes. Finally, the idea of learning from our failures is extremely important. In other words, in order to succeed at Lean, or any aspect of continuous improvement for that matter, an organization must be willing to try and fail from time to time, since learning from these failures will be the most powerful teacher of all. Alright, well, this wraps up this introductory lesson. If you'd like to learn more about Lean thinking principles, please visit us at gembaacademy.com, where you'll be able to view free Lean training videos after registering for a Lean Starter account. Until then, on behalf of all of us at Gemba Academy, I'd like to wish you all the best as you progress on this never-ending journey of continuous improvement. Hey there, my name is Ron Pereira of Gemba Academy, and I'd like to welcome you to this course that's focused on dealing with the 7 deadly wastes. Now, in this first module, we're going to get things started with an overview of the topic, where we'll learn what the 7 wastes are, allowing us to then build on this knowledge in later modules, where our focus will be on finding ways of eliminating all forms of waste. Well, specifically, by the end of this module, you'll know exactly what it means for an activity to be value-added, non-value-added, or waste. And you'll also be able to identify what are commonly referred to as the 7 deadly wastes. Now, throughout this course on the 7 wastes, we'll be visiting RAM Technologies, a custom foam fabricator located in Washington. And while inside their factory, we'll do our best to demonstrate what each of the 7 wastes look like, while also showing what things look like when these wastes are eliminated. But let's go ahead and start things off by discussing the various elements of work. Now, when I say elements, I mean that any work or activity we do can be classified into one of 3 categories. First, we have what we call value-added work. Now, for something to be called value-added, 3 things must exist. The customer must be willing to pay for it. The thing must be changed in some way. In other words, we like to say that when value-added work is done, the form, fit, or function of a thing is changed. And finally, the work must be done right the first time. Now, if any of these 3 points are missing, the step or process cannot be said to be value-added. And while value-added activities are what we prefer to do most of the time, we won't spend much time or effort focusing on value-added steps as it relates to reducing waste. But I'll explain why this is later in the module. Next, non-value-added work is work that adds no value but must be done to meet the customer's needs under today's conditions. Now, this is a minor area of focus in lean manufacturing since it's harder to improve in this area and there's less of this type of work than the third and final category, which is waste. Waste is also referred to as muda, which adds no value and customers are not willing to pay for it. Now, the best way to understand the impact of waste is to look at work from the customer's viewpoint while asking yourself, would I want to pay for this if I was a customer? Now, even some things that you would be willing to pay for may be done at a cost that's too high or with too many non-essential steps. Now, it could be said that eliminating waste is like defragging a computer. When you defragment a computer, you will rearrange the data so that you can open up space. And when data is fragmented, there are useless bits that are filling up memory, much like the useless amounts of waste taking up space and time within our processes. By identifying where value-added portions are and moving or removing the non-value-added bits, you improve performance of your computer. In the same way, taking waste out of your process improves its performance by radically reducing the time it takes to fulfill a customer request. Now, as we discussed earlier, we'd prefer to spend most of our time doing value-added work. Unfortunately, when we look at the total lead time through a value stream, we find that a massive amount of muda, or waste, is stealing resources and time. Another unfortunate activity we often see companies doing is attempting to reduce the overall lead time by making the value-added processes more efficient. In other words, as an example, they work to save a few seconds or minutes of machine cycle time in order to reduce the overall lead time. And while this isn't necessarily bad, there's far more opportunity in reducing the waste in the process first before worrying about improving the value-added steps. With all of this said, in order to be able to attack this waste, we must be able to identify it. So, let's spend the remainder of this module by discussing what we refer to as the 7 deadly wastes. Now, the first waste is defects, which is simply work that is less than the level the customer, both internal and external, has requested. Now, some examples of defects are rework, scrap, missing parts, wrong parts, and yield loss at startup. Now, as a point of reference, the waste of defects is also sometimes referred to as the waste of correction. Now, in this example, we see that our operator, whose name is Isaac, is struggling to understand his work instructions, and as such, scrap parts have resulted. Next, we come to the waste of inventory, which is any work or material on hand other than what's needed right now to satisfy customer demand. Now, some examples of inventory waste are excess raw materials, work in process, finished goods, supplies, and spare parts. Now, in an upcoming module, we'll spend more time exploring the different types of inventory we might have on hand, such as cycle stock, buffer stock, and safety stock. Now, in this example, we see Isaac surrounded by piles of inventory, making it hard for him to even know what to grab. All right, next we experience the waste of processing, sometimes called over-processing, which is when something's designed in such a way that uses more resources, such as space, energy, or people, than is truly required. Sort of like using a sledgehammer to smash a peanut. The waste of processing is definitely the hardest to understand and learn to see, since the most common root causes are a lack of understanding of customer needs. Now, some examples of processing waste are machines that are slower or faster than needed, equipment that uses more energy than needed, redundant work such as copying information, drilling a hole instead of punching it, and cleaning something multiple times. Well, here we see Isaac carefully measuring each piece of foam when, as it turns out, these pieces have already been cut to size and don't require such meticulous and time-consuming verification. Next, anytime there's idle time created because materials, machines, or information are not ready for people, we have the waste of waiting. Now, this waste is usually less visible than the others because it's often replaced by overproduction or busy work. So, in fact, when waiting becomes visible, it's important to keep people from working just to keep busy, since this busy work often does more harm than good. Now, some examples of waiting are people waiting for materials, an accountant waiting for information to close the monthly books, warehouse employees waiting on a forklift, or a nurse waiting on important supplies to arrive. Now, in this scene, it seems that Isaac has run out of work and is obviously looking for something to do, so he resorts to his newspaper and text messaging his friends.
Looking to add value to your work, your company, and your day-to-day routines? Look to Lean. Lean is the methodology we use for process improvements. There are 5 principles that guide how we apply Lean. The first principle is specify value in the eyes of the customer. Focus on what the customer wants and align the processes to deliver that. Ensure customer-driven measurements are in place. The second principle is identify the value stream and eliminate waste. This means know the flow of the process and eliminate the barriers that slow down or impede the flow. Those barriers are waste. The third principle is make value flow at the pull of the customer. This means understanding all aspects of the customer's demands. Don't create them in advance. Remember, the customer's needs dictate the scope of the work, not the other way around. And it's important to meet the time frame for the customers. Don't be too early, and definitely don't be late. The fourth principle is involve and empower employees. This principle is repeated endlessly. It's about involving employees who are closest to the work so they can identify issues and make improvements. The fifth principle is continuously improve in pursuit of perfection. Share what you learn after you've made your improvements and build quality and mistake proofing into your processes. If you haven't already noticed, value is an important word in the Lean world. But what is value? Well, value can be described using the 3 C's. Customer cares. Are you doing things the customer cares about? When was the last time you asked the customer about his or her needs? Changes. It transforms information or materials. Are you physically changing the thing or information? Correct. Done right the first time. Is it correct? Value added means that it meets all three of the C's. Now that you know the 5 principles that guide Lean and the definition of value, I challenge you to apply these principles to any of your processes. Let me share with you an important aspect of Lean, recognizing the 8 types of waste. Why care about waste? Quite simply, if you eliminate waste in your processes, you can increase output, reduce downtime, and gain more time to perform those other value-added tasks you've been meaning to do. The first type of waste involves missing or incorrect information or documentation. This is called a defect. An example is an invoice missing the PO number, a spreadsheet containing wrong numbers, or an incomplete work order. The second type of waste is making more than is immediately required by the customer. This is overproduction. The next type of waste occurs when you don't have the right parts, information, or instructions you need to complete the task at hand. When that happens, you are then waiting. The fourth type of waste involves using more than is needed to complete the task, or when everyone on the team uses different steps to complete the same task. This is non-standard processing. The moving of people, products, and information is the next type of waste. We call this transportation. Anything that must move more than is absolutely necessary is considered waste. One Lean project removed 4 minutes of transportation and saved over $40,000. Even a small amount can make a big difference. The sixth type of waste involves underutilizing team members by not matching their skill sets and capabilities with the task or work needed. It can also happen when tasks are delegated without adequate training being provided. The waste here is that of intellect. The seventh waste is about excess bending and turning when repeatedly using materials or equipment for the job. This is referred to as motion. Relocating materials to a point of use can reduce this type of waste. The last waste is about storing materials or documentation before they are needed. This is excess inventory. It's helpful to know that inventory can take many forms. There is physical inventory of materials, excess emails in your inbox, backlogged invoices, or sales calls waiting to be answered. This covers the 8 types of waste, and I now challenge you to find and eliminate waste in your processes. Do a waste walk. Walk through your processes, identifying the different types of waste, and eliminate them.
I'm a pizza connoisseur, and I know what I like. There are 3 factors in particular that add value to a pizza: the quality and the freshness of the ingredients, the preparation of the dough, which is best done by hand, and finally the use of a wood-fire oven for baking the pie. To prepare a pizza, the restaurant will need 3 minutes to knead the dough, then 2 hours for the dough to rest, and 2 minutes to ready the table. The moment I enter the restaurant is when what we call customer-facing cycle time begins. At this point, the restaurant still needs 1 minute to take my order, 2 minutes to prepare my pizza, 3 minutes to cook it, and 1 more minute to bring it to my table. As you can see, value is not created in a moment, but in a stream of activities. Now, what is the cost of all these activities? And how long should I wait to get my pizza? Looking at the value stream, the overhead cost of labor for one pizza is around 3 euros. And let's assume that the price of the ingredients, dough, tomatoes and cheese amounts to 3 euros. The total cost is thus 6 euros. And when I arrive at the restaurant, I shouldn't have to wait more than 7 minutes. Is that realistic? A 6 euros pizza in 7 minutes? Of course not. You'd pay at least 15 euros and wait 20 minutes. But why is that? You pay for more than just the creation of value that you expect as a customer. You also pay for the waiter's idle time when business is low at the restaurant, for the time they walk between their tables and the kitchen, and for the extra time they spend with you to be friendly and fun. You pay for that pizza that no one picked up, for the unused dough that will be thrown away, for these rotten tomatoes, and well, for this obviously overqualified cashier. Now, if a competitor begins selling pizza for 20% less, the manager has two options. Option 1, cut costs. Buy cheaper ingredients, use an industrial oven, buy ready-to-use dough. Unfortunately, this will affect the quality of the pizza and eventually the restaurant's revenues. Option 2, the manager takes a lean approach and looks at the value stream mapping to unlock the hidden value. It then finds ways to reduce waste. For example, an app to take orders which would help avoid mistakes, a happy hour to cut idle time, a plan to streamline the waiter's movement. Unlocking the hidden value will allow him to sustain his business over time. A lean mindset for a winning strategy.